Back to back, John's story. This so far, Angelica, you said I would like this story. I don't like it so far. Hopefully the ending will be better than what is going on now, because there's flowers and bad. And I don't do scarves. Scarves are for gay men. No more scarves. Okay, minutes later we were in several cars since we didn't have a limo big enough for all of us, and he, in his own words, sure as hell wasn't going to let any of us drive any of the other limos. So then he looked quite pointedly at BD and I, and the two of us slapped him. And now I was stuck in a car with Luke, John, and Cameron. Why am I in a car with them? I mean, Cameron, yes, but Luke and John, no. Like, I should be in a car with Tegan and Cameron and Angelica and Julia and Jade and Haley, and we should all be, like, partying in a car because we're awesome. Anyways, I was stuck in a car with Luke, John, and Cameron in what was probably the most unbelievably awkward thing ever, with John driving, Cameron essentially drooling all over Luke in his gospel-y German glory, and Luke drooling all over my own badassness. As we were simply sitting there and half falling out of the car as I leaned as far away from the brothers as possible. It was at least 5 to 10 minutes of horribleness, though it felt like an eternity and longer. I think that the others could tell that I felt that way, because the second that we parked, I opened the door and practically spilled outside gasping for air. The others laughed, but I was not amused. John offered a hand to help me up, though I ignored it and stood up on my own. Sadly, one of the girls decided that it was a good time to go to the restroom, and like the stupid person I was, I didn't think that a single second ahead. I stayed outside of there and leaned up against the wall just outside of the restroom, playing blackjack on my phone until I got tired of standing still and started to pace. Sha-la-la-la-la-la, don't be scared, you got the moves prepared, you want to kiss me, girl. I heard a voice sing from around the corner after a horribly short-lived but beautiful 2 seconds of peace, and rolled my eyes, turning to see who it was. Someone unexpectedly, it was Luke, and not John, though their voices sounded eerily similar to each other's. His bluish-green gaze was locked on me, and I looked back at him emotionlessly before saying, "The only moves I have prepared are the ones that will mash your face into that garbage can." I gestured toward the metal and stone trash can nearby, where some kid was rubbing stale pink gum. That's stale pink gum on the side of. "Well then," Luke said, transitioning swiftly into an entirely new Disney pickup line. "Well, that's too bad, because Mary, you's poppin'." I laughed after a brief moment, not exactly in encouragement, but more in despair of him and his desperateness. "Can I just buy you an umbrella and maybe you can jump off the RCE building and try to fly?" Perhaps I should have been more careful with my words, since there was a lot a guy could do with that. In fact, Luke did, and he knew it. "Oh, but with you watching, I'd be able to do it, because you are the wind beneath my wings." "Not if I tie you up and mail you back to Germany," I said, exasperated. "Would I get a kiss goodbye? How about a punch?" I punched him in the chest and shoved him against a wall, then stalked away, joining the other girls as they exited out of the bathroom in a flurry of the scent of generic soap. I didn't look back. "Okay, bitches," I started, not holding back with my words and ideas and whatever the hell I wanted to do. "We're going to go to the boat, and we're going to get drunk." Beatty and Trix immediately jumped up and started cheering excitedly, and Albert opened his mouth to say something to me, but I quickly shut the kids up with a blunt, "Not you." Then I turned to Albert, ignoring Beatty and Trix's complaints, and said to my butler, Schiffer, "Or you, because you're the one who has to run the boat." "That's not what I was going to say, but all right," Albert replied and got up from his seat on a bench. And it took maybe 30 minutes or an hour or so for me to herd everyone on the boat that I so rarely ever use, but rented out a lot. And that was excluding the time that I spent keeping Matthew away from Cameron, Luke and John away from myself, and BD from the ocean and sharp rocks. I smiled sadly as I went inside and skipped the glass that waited for me beside the bottles of at least 15 kinds of alcohol. Simply, instead, just grabbing a bottle of beer and popping it open with my teeth, like a hippie. Or a redneck, whatever. Julia, Cameron, and Haley shook their heads at me in disappointment and disapproval. No, Julia would not have just shook her head. She would have slapped me across the face for drinking. And I would have gotten in trouble. I took a swig of... no, never mind. Haley looked at me in disappointment and disapproval, whilst Jade looked neutral and Angelica and Tegan looked unsurprised. I took a swig of beer and settled in a chair near the corner. Vaguely, I remembered John inviting me outside to look at the ocean or something, though other than that, nothing. I found myself standing by the railing, staring absently at the ocean while staying a good 5 feet away from John. "I've danced with Thing 1 and held hands with Thing 2, John said suddenly, "but not a creature in Whoville compares to you." I laughed dryly. "How quaint. What are you doing here? Go drink and party and whatever downstairs. I need someone to make sure that the kids don't drink." "You trust me?" John asked, curiously raising an eyebrow at me. "I trust you," I answered hesitantly. "Did I? Yes. No. With some things, then, I suppose." Little Red shouldn't trust the wolf. And Beauty shouldn't trust the beast, I replied in turn. I think you're mistaken on who the wolf is. And I think you're mistaken on who the beauty is, John whispered. I rolled my eyes, and after that, stared down at the ground. Which was a bad idea, actually, since John picked that moment to rest his arms around me in a light hug and kiss me. Again? My arms uncrossed and my hands balled into fists. Dear Lord, John, no. Whoa, 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 whoa. What was that? I asked John, pushing him roughly away from me. John tried to explain. He looked confused as to what he actually truly thought anymore. Silence until he inhaled deeply and finally said, I don't love you anymore. I knew my mouth was gaping open before I fully acknowledged it. I knew my... Yeah! Woo! 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 Yes! Yes! Woo! Woo! Yeah! Woo! It's party time! No, I'm just kidding. 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 Okay. Woo! Okay. Enough random dancing. I knew my mouth was gaping open before I fully acknowledged it. I knew my eyes were wide open before I actually made them. I knew that a weight was lifted off my shoulders before I pushed it off. Wait, is that still fine? John said, raising an eyebrow curiously at me as he tried to understand my facial expression. Or are you mad or sad or what? Mad? I said, knowing full well that my voice was rising to a yell. I shook my head, a grin spreading across my face, and I started to simply and utterly laugh. Hell, that is the single best thing you've ever fucking told me, John. I hugged him, laughing and laughing until he joined in too. I don't quite regret drinking everything I had before, that I probably should have. You'd think that would take more than a few bottles to get me loopy, but that is definitely not the case. I could tell because I was allowing John to hold my hand, but nothing more. We stood not quite in silence in the boat, watching the ocean and the sun and the clouds float by in what seemed to me a blur of oranges and blues and yellows. It was less of a silence and more of something like quiet thought and conversation. A meaningless conversation, yes, but one that looped and turned and chased itself in random circles, just the kind that I rarely got the chance to have with someone else, yet loved to have. Sweet, crazy conversations full of half-sentences, daydreams, and misunderstandings more thrilling than understanding could ever be. Toni Morrison was wise and describes exactly what was going on perfectly. If money doesn't grow on trees, why do banks have branches? John asked me quietly. Puns, I decided after a moment of contemplation. Someone, somewhere, at some point in time, decided that they were hilarious and called their second bank location a branch. Why is it called a building if it's already built? Well, the building had to at some point be built, and words tend to derive from each other by linking to its creation, so a building is a building because it has to have been built. John answered, why does Sally sell seashells at the seashore if people can just pick them up anyways? Bad marketing. Sally was stupid. She's a fucking whore and high all the time, I responded, and John laughed. A quiet, almost seemingly sad sound. If love is blind, why is lingerie so popular? John didn't even look at me as he replied simply, lust. Silence. Silence until BD came storming past, slapped John's hand out of mine, and yelled loudly, we're going back to the shore because we're all fucked. I didn't grab John's hand again until after BD disappeared around the corner of the boat, and he didn't reach for my hand again either. Instead, we simply shared a conspiratorial glance and laughed. Nothing more. Everything seemed to go past me in a flurry after that. There were a few more fleeting memories of Cameron and Matthew canoodling in a corner together. Mark and Angelica discussing superheroes and Star Wars, while Luke and the rest of the girls played Monopoly. Then after that, BS and blackjack. Bradley Sierra. I also vaguely remember that BD and the other flower children busting inside for a moment or two, though I don't quite recall what they did afterwards. I suspect that they, or more specifically BD and Trix, stole a bottle or two of one of the various alcohols, since a few that had been there before were missing. But now, all of us stood on the cliff top, staring out at the ocean below, and watching the sun's last beams fade into the indigo night sky. The kids jumped first, holding hands loosely, and us responsible adults simply watched, laughing all through the entirety of it. They all splashed down into the water below, one after the other in a shower of whitish ocean foam and dark waves. Whoops and yells echoed back at us, and all of us laughed again. Come on, I said, waving the others close to the edge. We'll do it better than them, just because of the ability of a badass is hereditary, and they wouldn't have been all that awesome without us. Hell, they wouldn't even exist without us, Angelica commented, shrugging and stepping closer to the cliff edge with the others. One, Cameron said, staring numbly at the churning water below. 2. Julia continued, biting her lip for a moment. 3. The chorus of the gospel siblings said in unison from behind us, and the 7 of us were all pushed from the cliff instead of jumping of our own accord. I heard the laughter of the boys even on our well down, but behind the wind whistling past you as I fell. Fuck you, John! Great, because that's all he ever really wanted! I heard Luke call back, and I opened my mouth to say something, but I hit the water before I could. When I reached the surface, I yelled back, that's what you're there for, isn't it? Incest. Angelica and the others sing-song from the shore, and I laughed. I swam back to shore quickly as the gospel siblings, plus Gregory, jumped off the cliff. They splashed down laughing, and I smiled faintly because my own friend, beside my own friend, says Albert draped a towel over my shoulders. Maybe John and his siblings weren't so terrible, if only when John isn't trying to fall back in love with me. What can I say? I just have that effect on people.